All right, scholars, now we're on to your body paragraphs, which should have been finished for home practice. I think this is the toughest part of the actual essay. So I just wanted to remind you of a couple things. This part of the video is going to be pretty long because I'm going to walk you through, and you may want to listen to other sections again. But you have this sheet in your binder, and it was printed on yellow paper. It's that essay structure, and this middle section is what you're looking at, the body paragraph. So if you just think of even the structure of an essay, it's the bulk of it, right? So it really has to be strong. One of the things that I noticed is students were like, well, what's the formula here? Should I have a concrete detail? Remember, concrete details is a fancy word for evidence, and then commentary. So commentary is just opinion. Or should I have commentary, then concrete detail? There's actually no set formula, but here's the thing to note. If you have a piece of evidence supporting your thesis, so if I say, for example, family is important, that was like part of my thesis, and my evidence supports that family is important, I need something in the beginning to help introduce that quote or evidence, and then something at the end to kind of give the opinion, okay? One of the things I kind of noticed from students who sent me body paragraphs was that students were finding these great lines, but they were just dropping them into the text. You want to avoid what we call dropped quotes. And so let me show you an example that I wrote. So here would be an example of a dropped quote. So look what you have. Scrooge was visited by his one and only friend Jacob Marley, who arrives on Christmas Eve to warn Scrooge of impending danger. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. Notice here I've got the perfect citation, and I've got a quote, but I don't actually introduce this quote. It's like random. I don't even say who said this quote, okay? This is what we call a dropped quote. And I want you to look at your own body paragraphs to say, did you just put in a random quote, but you don't explain it? You have to explain it, okay? A drop quote is ultimately when a writer uses a quoted line from a text as a standalone sentence in the essay. It starts to feel awkward. It's missing what we call the magic. So let me take this same quote and let me kind of walk it through a process, okay? So here, I could introduce this quote and then maybe use a colon with it. So I'm going to take this same quote, and notice it was here, okay? I don't have any introduction to it. I'm going to add an introduction. So here we go. In the beginning of the novella, Dickens uses Jacob Marley's ghost wrapped in chains to show Scrooge what kind of fate, or perhaps worse, awaits him if he continues his miserly ways. Scrooge tells his friend that he was a good businessman. This enrages Marley, who responds. Okay, so notice I'm saying who's going to say it. I give some context. And then I put this colon to introduce this long quote. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business. Now I'm going to explain this quote. In this quote, Marley is upset by Scrooge's statement, noting that the business of dealing with goods and finances is but a small aspect of life. Paying respect to his fellow mankind should have been his business. Notice I didn't just drop a quote. This is just dropping it in with no explanation. Instead, I explain it a little bit before and after, okay? In this format, I have commentary, which is in blue, concrete detail, and then commentary. So you could have commentary, concrete detail, commentary. You could, if done well, just have commentary and then concrete detail. It just depends on how you write. One thing I wanted to notice here is, if you notice my citation, I only have a page number. That's because I already said Dickens earlier, so I don't need to repeat it here. So if it's in the same idea, then you don't need to repeat it, okay? So here's one thing I wanted to note. You want to avoid dropping in a quote for your evidence. Instead, you want them to kind of blend together like colors. You want to move smoothly from concrete details or evidence to commentary, okay? So how do you do that? First of all, try to integrate your quotes into the text. I'm going to show you another example of that. Never just drop a quote into your writing, okay? And then you want to use your own words to introduce the quote. This transition sheet might be a good guide for you, okay? Now let me just show you briefly how to integrate a quote in. So let's take, for example, this line, and we're going to look up here. I was thinking about how Scrooge isolates himself, right? And so in the scene where the Ghost of Christmas Past takes Scrooge to see his childhood school, it mentions solitary child. Here's where I'm going to embed the quote. So I have Scrooge, having always been a solitary child, chooses to be alone instead of relishing familial relationships. This comes from Dickens 19, right? Here I've used some lines in the text, or actually just 2 words in the text, but I've embedded them around my own words. That might help you have a good flow, okay? Now, one of the things I would add in here, and you see this right here, these are some additional signal words that might help you transition from concrete detail or evidence to commentary. So you might say, for example, the narrator concludes that, the narrator describes, the narrator states. This set of words right here, I might add this set to your transitions sheet here, okay? So you might want to take like a picture with your phone or write them down onto your transition word sheet. These words could help you have a good flow as well, okay? Here's what I'm going to ask for you to do now. So you've listened to kind of my commentary on your body paragraph. I would ask that you make any edits to it yourself, okay? And here's what I want you to edit for, because you're ultimately then going to switch and show it to a colleague. You're going to look to see, does each paragraph include at least 2 concrete details that go with your topic? Does each concrete detail include MLA citation? Remember, if you use Dickens already, you could just use the page number. If you haven't, you have to use the name, okay? And then does your concrete detail flow with your commentary? Does it feel natural? You might want to kind of whisper read this to yourself to check this out. And then, have you provided insightful commentary for each concrete detail that shows how the detail proves your point? How does each piece of evidence prove your thesis? Okay? So this is what I want you to do. Right now, I want you to do this for yourself. Look on your own body paragraphs to do this. And then I would like you to trade with someone in your A Christmas Carol group and get their feedback. This should be an oral conversation and discussion, okay? At this point, you're going to then stop the video. Once you have done that, you're going to turn back to your video and look at your conclusion paragraph. All right, good luck.